Hello, everyone. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by David Ubben. And David raised his eyebrows a little bit for the new introduction. When we rebranded the show until Saturday, this is the Saturday that we were waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
College football is a year-round sport. We have recruiting, we have coaching carousel, we have all sorts of things, spring football, signing day, all the stuff. But this is, to me, the epitome of the sport. And I thought that Saturday rivalry weekend, with a lot of teams still alive for the national championship race and conference championship races and all the things that are still out there, was maybe the best Saturday we've had in the entire season, and one of the better Saturdays that we've had in the past few years. And it didn't really take that many crazy upsets to get there either. So we have a lot to unpack, Dave, but let me first properly welcome everybody to the Week 13 reaction edition of Until Saturday. We have crazy rivalry week results. We had the Iron Bowl finish that I screamed in my house so loud. I had an Alabama fan over watching it with me, and I've never in my life would have thought they would have won the way that they did. Of course, we have the Ohio State-Michigan game, and Michigan's 30-24 win over the Buckeyes, and we have to unpack a lot of the things that means. We have a clear playoff race. Oregon routing Oregon State, Washington hitting a game-winning field goal to be the first team in the Pac-12 era to finish the regular season undefeated in conference play. Texas dropped 57 on Texas Tech to solidify itself as the Big 12 favorite and potential college football playoff entry. A lot to get through, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
First, though, before we get into it, I just wanted to remind everybody to like and subscribe to the podcast feed. If you're watching here live on the YouTube channel, we certainly appreciate your support. I see a lot of very familiar names in here, and it means the world to Dave and I this season as we go into the postseason to have built the community that we built on here, and hopefully it continues to grow. If you like to watch us on YouTube but would want to hear all of our shows, even the ones that don't go on YouTube, in the podcast feed, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. The links to that can be found in the show's description. And conversely, if you're listening to this on Sunday morning and you want to watch us live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, I encourage you to follow us on the YouTube channel. Again, the link is in the show's description. And really, I think it's just the whole package where you get content at one place and not the other. And really, you should be subscribed to both. Sunday, we do the Sunday Sound Off Show where we take your voicemails and allow you to give us your thoughts, your feelings, your anger, your love, anything you have to say.
Please
off, call. Yeah, sound off. Yeah. 316-462-9852 is the line. Again, that is 316-462-9852. You can call or text that line. We're certainly going to favor the voicemails because hearing your guys' voices has made that show one of the more fun ones we do every week, and it makes me feel like you're a part of it. Lastly, subscribe to The Athletic for $1 a month for our Black Friday deal. It lasts for 12 months. It's $12 for a full year of access to The Athletic. That is theathletic.com/Saturday. The deal is good through 11/27, which is this Monday. Sign up for the Until Saturday newsletter where you'll get your daily fill of college football news right to your inbox. You do not have to be subscribed to The Athletic in order to get this newsletter, but for $1 a month, I'd really encourage you to do so if you have not done it yet. Okay, Dave.
Yes.
Let's talk about some football now.
Michigan. I appreciate getting into these games while we have a snow classic, Farmageddon. The best battle in the snow since the wife versus Oren Ishii. But let's get to the big games today.
Yes, and by the way, we are in a position as we start the show where Georgia is beating Georgia Tech by a single score with less than 4 minutes left, but I'm assuming that Georgia is going to score a touchdown in quick order here. But if grab-ass does happen, we will be here live to report that grab-ass. But let's go to the biggest game of the week. I think maybe the biggest game of the year, and you can maybe even make the case the biggest game going into it of the last 5 years or even the decade, depending on who you root for. Michigan at home beats Ohio State 30-24. Ohio State had the ball with less than a minute left, down by 6, was driving, seemed like it was going to be a classic finish. Kyle McCord is hit as he tries to throw as they are mounting their comeback, and it is picked off by a 3-star kid from Ohio, and Michigan outlasts Ohio State. As we've had 6 or 7 hours to let this game digest a little bit, what's your main takeaway from what we saw here on Saturday afternoon, and where do we hit the mark and where do we miss it, Dave?
I think that there was a lot at stake on both sides. Both sides had to push all their chips into this game. But I don't remember a team ever playing a game like Michigan had to play today, where an entire era of football and how that era is viewed is at stake. If Michigan had lost this game at all, if they had lost it by double digits, everything that Jim Harbaugh has done in the, basically since the 2-4 pandemic season, I think has an asterisk by it. Michigan fans would disagree probably, but in the way that it's viewed within the sport, a lot of people would kind of be like, well, but they were cheating the whole time, right? And when you win this game today and you win it, I mean, Michigan was the better team today. If you win this game today, it makes it a lot harder for people to do that because you've played now basically half a season where it's pretty clear that you probably don't have people's signals. Whatever scheme, however the details worked out with Connor Steins was not going in. And I just don't remember a game like this. I mean, USC lost that game at the end to Texas, but it didn't lessen what Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush did. We just haven't seen a game where like 3 years of accomplishments were on the line. And the stakes were incredibly, incredibly high for both sides today. And obviously we'll get to the Ryan Day discussion, whether or not you can, you're succeeding as the leader of a program is at stake there, and trying to break through and trying to fix that Michigan problem, which they failed to do. I mean, it was just college football at its best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually don't even have a stomach for talking about the cheating stuff right now. It's like they beat Penn State after this all came out, and they beat Ohio State after this all came out, and everybody else they played on the schedule. Looming. It's looming, but I don't think that it's appropriate to talk about it right now, because I think that while acknowledging that this was part of the hype and the buy-in to people wanting to watch this game, I also don't think that what they did could be or should be delegitimized by anything, because they did it without their head coach against a team that had more than enough time to prepare and understand that their signals were compromised, and they won the game flat out. So
but they made sure today by winning that they're not delegitimized.
Yeah, that's right. I'm saying, like, if they would have lost, like you said, then we might be talking about, well, what does this mean for the entire Michigan Jim Harbaugh era? And we're not talking about that, nor do I think that anybody should be. I think it's just kind of a loser way to respond to this if you're an Ohio State fan. That's just, you lost, you take it on the chin. That's part of being a sports fan. I think that it's an interesting situation now as you have Michigan beating 2 top 10 teams. And I don't know what Penn State is, but fringe top 10 team now in the previous 3 weeks without their head coach out there. I assume that Jim Harbaugh will be returning to full active duty going into the Big Ten championship game. And I actually saw a meme that have you ever seen that meme where you're on a train and one side is like looking at the cliff and all the rocks, and the other side of the train is like looking at a beautiful landscape? One person on the left side of the train was beating Ohio State again, and that was like looking out at this beautiful landscape. And then the other side of looking at the rocks was have to watch Iowa film. I think that is a really funny situation, but Michigan earned it, man, and they earned it in a way that they did in the previous 2 years, which was being up by 3 and getting the ball back with 8 minutes left in the football game, and running it down Ohio State's throat, and ultimately kicking a field goal and leaving Ohio State 1 minute of clock left and 0 timeouts, I think, starting from their own 19-yard line, if I remember correctly. In the second half, they had 219 total yards, 16 points, and had time of possession of 18-22. And they just hard-nosed Ohio State to the victory. So, there's a lot to unpack here on the Ohio State side of this stuff. And I think that the actual Ohio State discussion and what you think of Ryan Day, how he called the game, what Ohio State does next is actually the more interesting side of this, because the Michigan side is, well, they're really good. They won, and they have a lot of season left in terms of their Big Ten championship run. And a lot of Michigan breakdowns are certain to come. Like, for instance, how do you think that they stack up against the other CFP unbeatens right now in Washington, Florida State, and Georgia? I don't know if my mind had been changed for either of these teams to be somebody that could go out and beat Georgia right now. But
yeah,
I do think that Michigan is certainly in a position where I think you could make the case that they're the second best team in college football. And by winning this game, it's also important to acknowledge that Michigan will either be the number 1 or the number 2 seed in the final CFP rankings, thus avoiding whichever SEC conglomerate emerges. in this playoff in the first round, which then puts them in a position where they might be favored in a semifinal game and actually get to the final stage there where you're 4 quarters away from winning a national championship. So, my hat's off to Michigan. I question J.J. McCarthy's ability to, win the big game. I don't know that he did crazy things in this game, but made a beautiful touchdown pass. He was as good as
he needed to be.
Touched a beautiful touchdown pass in the second quarter that went through 2 Ohio State defenders and made it 14-3. Ohio State chipped back. I do think that it's kind of bizarre that they don't really seem to put the ball in his hands in game critical moments at the end, but it turns out that they haven't had to yet. So, I wrote a column after the game about Ohio State's quarterback choice and the way that Ryan Day recruited JJ and Kyle McCord. And I explored the notion that it's possible that Ryan Day, who's been one of the better quarterback developers in our sport, made the wrong decision there. And that's in a column on The Athletic, and you can go sign up for $1 for 12 months. But, let's kind of segue into the Ohio State side of this thing here by listening to a little bit of what Ryan Day had to say after the game.
But we're all disappointed. We know that what this game means to so many people, and so to come up short is certainly crushing, not only just because you invest your whole year in it. We know at Ohio State what this game means. And so, there's a locker room in there that's devastated. And it wasn't a lack of effort, but again, we didn't win the rushing yards. We didn't win the turnover battle. So you're not going to win the game.
It kind of seems
like he sounds like a man not excited for the upcoming New Year's Six Bowl. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, that's a failure of a season for Ohio State. The thing that I think is interesting, and I saw somebody tweet this, I don't remember who it was, but it's a good point of Ohio State completely seemed to transform their program this year in order to exist in these Big Ten games. And they actually had a drive in the third quarter where they rushed it, I believe, 8 times in a row for a touchdown to tie it at 17.
Yeah,
and it seemed
that was the most impressive moment of the day.
Yeah, right. And it seemed like from that point on, I was like, okay, this Ohio State team would have folded last year. There were certain moments in that game where Michigan could have ran away with it again, and Ohio State, wasn't soft in those moments. But I thought that Ryan Day coached scared for a large portion of that game. And I think that Ryan Day has lost a portion of this fan base. I don't know if it's all of it. And I know that drives you crazy. But I sent you a tweet during the post game that was from a buddy of mine who covers Ohio State, or he covers it for a fan site, but it was a funny tweet. He said, Ryan Day is 56-7 in his career at Ohio State, and all the 7 losses were the only games I care about. And you thought that was insane, but I think there's a large portion of Ohio State fans who watch this game and go, why are you settling for a 52-yard field goal with 38 seconds left and a timeout before halftime? Why aren't you giving special wrinkles that you spend all year inserting into this game? And I don't want to blow the end of the Washington game, but Kalen DeBoer faced a 4th and 1 from his own 29-yard line with a minute left in a tie game and a rivalry game and went for it.
You played to win the game.
And not only did he go for it, but he drew up a play that fooled the cameraman and fooled everybody watching it. Incredible. And it's like, I don't know when I watch Ohio State play Michigan if they do anything even close to creative as it pertains to being aggressive or, installing things specifically for that game. Coaches used to spend all year putting things in their bag to pull out of the bag in this game. And Ohio State just does not out-scheme their opponents. And Ryan Day gets nervous, and he makes conservative calls for a coach that has basically built his entire career, at least getting into the job, as being aggressive and going for it on 4th down and drawing up critical plays that change games, into this guy that considers what Michigan might do if they don't get a first down on 4th and 4 before halftime with 38 seconds left. And I think when you coach that way, it permeates on your team. I think that your team goes into the locker room with a missed 52-yard field goal and 32-degree weather, wondering if their coach trusts them or if they are in a position to actually win. And frankly speaking, if you watch the Ohio State-Michigan game, there were a few breaks that went right and went wrong for both teams. Ohio State most certainly could have won that game. And I think part of the reason why they lost is because their coach scared. Am I crazy?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think the clear example, obviously, at the end of the first half where you're making some decisions there. We talked about this on the reaction show earlier today, But that play ended with 38 seconds. You had a timeout left in your bag. You've got a 4th and 4. And I said, listen, if you truth serumed everybody on that offense, what would they all think of the decision to pack it in and kick? And I think if you had a chance to get that kick 10 yards closer, 15 yards closer, Ari, you never know. One missed tackle and you're winning at halftime. You don't know. You got, Marvin the Martian out there running the show. He's a pretty good player. He's pretty tough to tackle in space sometimes. I just think the idea that you should just, we're gonna go ahead and kick the 52-yarder in a college game, in an NFL game,
settling for it.
It's
settling for it and accepting it.
Malpractice, but it's poor. It's poor game management.
Your Ohio State special teams has been bad all year. Your kicker has never made a field goal in a college game from that length. It's freezing outside. It's a rivalry game. And by the way, nobody said you had to go score a touchdown, but at least make it more manageable for them so that they get that extra 3 from the 25 instead of the 38 or whatever they were.
Yeah.
And get the 3 points. And then all of a sudden you're not as frantic at the end of the game needing a touchdown. So it's just, to me, it's like, where's your bag, Ryan Day? Why are you whittling up in these games? And, Ohio State was dancing on the field before the game and they were excited and it looked like they were loose, but I feel like that was all fake. Like it was fake loose. And, I criticized Kyle McCord after the game. I thought the interception that he threw on the 3rd drive of the game that gave Michigan a 7-0 lead was an awful decision and an awful throw. And if that play doesn't happen, then maybe the game goes a little bit differently. But like Ryan Day, I don't know how you fix this. It's not a talent issue. They have these players that, are able to perform and their coach doesn't put them in the best position to win this game. And it's just, that is the fact. So, you roll your eyes at the notion that they should fire him.
Well, but what should they do, Ari? Should they really fire? Should they fire him?
I don't think that they should.
Okay.
But the problem is their coach has a Michigan problem. And if he is going to be tight and it's going to continually end up like this, how do you fix that? And when do you make a move? Like, that's the thing.
I got two things here, Ari. One, I'm going to go get my broken record over elsewhere in my office. And I'm going to remind you that they were a field goal away from winning a national championship.
Nobody cares, Dave.
I know that, but
no one cares.
I'm going here. Hang on. I'm going to remind you that that's on the shelf, right? And I'm also going to say you can't fix the fact that Harbaugh bested you. You can't. That's done. But doesn't your Michigan problem sort of go away next year when this team is depleted and probably doesn't have Jim Harbaugh?
Well, when you have a Michigan problem, you lose to inferior teams. Like John Cooper had better teams than them all the time. He had a Michigan problem, and their seasons got blown away by average.
But Michigan's been better than Ohio State this year, Ari. Michigan's been better than Ohio State this year. He didn't lose to an inferior team today. He probably lost to a better
team. I'm saying when you have a Michigan problem, you can't say in 365
that's my
days.
Point. I don't think
you can't say.
I think that's that we're better. And I think that my point about the national championship is that I get it. I'm not saying Ohio State fans have to accept this, but my point is I get the frustration. I'm not saying you have to accept it, but I don't buy the idea that they can't beat Michigan and can't win a national championship here, and he's not the guy. And also, if you do want to make a move on Ryan Day, I'm very curious what direction you go. That's not to say Ohio State is not one of the best jobs in the country and wouldn't have a lot of capable, attractive candidates, but there's not really like a home run guy out there that makes a ton of sense that you could definitely pry away.
I also think too that you are forgetting the notion too that Ohio State has a lot of built-in advantages to being who it is, where, you don't have to go get somebody who is from Ohio or went to Ohio State. You're going to win 50. You're going to go 56-7 with just about anybody, I think. And you might kind of pull back a little bit in recruiting. I mean, listen, man, with that talent advantage, I think you would. I don't know what games you think they're out of. What games are they going to start losing that they haven't been losing already?
Well, I don't know if
they're going to start losing to Maryland.
Ari, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA are about to crash the league. That changes your schedule. You don't get to go beat up on Minnesota and Iowa every week anymore. There's some actual teams
but
with
Ryan
actual
Day
offenses
actually hasn't shown an ability to win those games yet.
I mean, that's fair.
He's lost to Oregon the last time they played.
I know.
It's like, what do you, at a certain point, you got to start wondering, like, what is it that you're saving? And I think that this is I'm just playing devil's advocate here. My notion isn't to fire him right away, but I think you have to acknowledge that when your coach tightens up in the biggest game of the year and he changes his entire program in order to be tough enough to win and they still lose, it's like, what's next? Do you recruit better? Do you bring in new assistants? Their defensive coordinator made $2 million this year, and they were really awesome on the stats page. But when they needed to stop, Michigan ran it down their throat for 8 minutes. He made $2 million. Like, what do you do? That's the thing. So
sounds like a fraudulent defense that somebody was warning people about.
Yes,
this week.
It was a banner day for Group A. By the way, Ohio State is now out of the discussion, and now Group A is down to Alabama, who won in a thrilling fashion, in Georgia. Georgia has escaped fake scare from Georgia Tech. They were winning pretty handily and just kind of were trying to get out of there without an injury, and I think they did.
There's a small window where two Group A teams could get in the playoff, but it's likely just going to be one.
I bring out Group A because it's a nice segue to the Iron Bowl. And this was a grab-ass infested game from start to finish. I think Alabama's not as perfect as maybe we were giving that credit for, but also, Dave, won in perhaps the most thrilling fashion you possibly could outside of returning a missed field goal for a touchdown as time expires. For fourth and goal from the 31-yard line, Hugh Freeze calls the timeout before to discuss his defensive alignment. I think they rushed to Jalen Milroe's back there for like 3 minutes.
They rushed to and had a spy on fourth and goal from the 31. A spy, Ari.
And yet somehow, first of all, why would they need a spy? I'm not a defensive genius. But you got 31 yards to go in your entire defense back there. I think that if he breaks past the line of scrimmage, you can commit to the run there. And, of course, Alabama, a team that has proven time and time again that it knows how to win. Jalen Milroe throws a 31-yard rope to the back of the end zone and finds Isaiah Bond, who somehow had single coverage in a situation.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Where
I'll tell you what was a really nice play, though, Ari, there. Isaiah Bond using the field, kind of pushing the DB out from under so he had some space to catch it, getting a little subtle push-off to give himself a little bit of separation, enough to make the catch. That's really, really good receiver play from Isaiah Bond.
I just don't know how a human could even be remotely open with that defensive setup. And I would really like to know what Hugh Freeze was discussing in that huddle during the timeout. But Alabama survives. Yeah. It would have removed Alabama from a national championship discussion. In fact, could have put Alabama at 2 losses, and then with an opportunity to beat Georgia in Atlanta, could have removed Group A altogether from the college football playoff, which would have guaranteed a new team on the block winning a national championship this year. That did not happen. Alabama escapes. I don't know if this changes your perspective on Alabama and their chances of winning a national title, but here we are. What was your thoughts on this? Was this just a weird Iron Bowl, or do you think that Alabama is more close to 7 out of 10 than 10 out of 10?
Well, I think I called this the classic okie doke on our pick show this week. Auburn losing to New Mexico State. This where they were set up for this. I mean, here's the thing. This is why we refer to them as Group A, Ari, because Georgia bullies most teams at the line of scrimmage. That's because of how they recruit. They get a guy that tweaks an ankle. Well, here comes the next 5-star that's played 40 snaps this year and is probably going to be fine. There's not a lot of teams that can do that. They can't bully Alabama. Now, maybe the offensive line a little bit. We'll see. Alabama's offensive line has improved, especially in run blocking the last few weeks. Pressure has been an issue. We'll see. I think they can push Georgia. They can win that game. I still think Georgia is clearly a better team. They did not look very good.
You're going.
I am going. I'll be in Atlanta. You'll be in Vegas this week, Ari, for the Pac-12 championship game.
I won that whole
well, I'm going to Vegas on Sunday, so don't worry about it. I'll be there.
Vegas on Monday is just not the same as Vegas on Friday. But
yeah, we're going to miss each other by about 12 hours in Vegas. I'm very sad.
Dude got a room at the Aria for $151. Can we talk about
All right,
how that worked out?
If we could not give away my location to our listeners, that'd be fantastic. Ari's out here trying to get me jumped, but
yeah.
No,
the Texas Tech fans might come out there and wreck you for hexing their team coming out in the year, but
maybe
it's a big hotel, Dave. I think you'll blend in nicely.
Let's hope. But no, I think like ultimately, they're gonna have to play an A game to beat Georgia, and if Georgia plays B+, they're gonna win that game. Georgia is a more complete team. They have played better on the lines, but Alabama has the athletes to compete, and this is the kind of game that Georgia, as you've alluded to all season long, would love to avoid, but Alabama has a funny way of forcing these kinds of matchups, and we're going to get one in Atlanta. I think it'll be a pretty even crowd. It's going to be a pretty crazy environment. And similar to today, in the game, the stakes won't be quite as high because this Alabama team had such moderate expectations coming into the year, and there hadn't been obviously interesting storylines, but it should be a fantastic football game between two national championship caliber teams. So I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how much there is to break down with this. Alabama survived in what was
the QB run game was killing them. It was I don't know what.
Yeah. I mean, Auburn was moving the football on them pretty good, but I don't think we can emphasize enough how insane it is to convert on 4th and goal from the 31-yard line with no
statistically
time left.
Way more unlikely than the 2nd and 26.
And I was watching with an Alabama fan, and he looked at me, and he shook my hand, and he said, "Ari, we are going to score on this play." And I said, "Buddy, I don't think you are." I was like, I said, "Your best hope here is a penalty that gives them an automatic first down." I didn't think they were going to be. And sure enough, Nick Saban pulls a rabbit out of his hat, and this would be the most appropriate year for Alabama to win a national championship, in the GOAT of all GOATs pulling another rabbit out of his hat. So quickly, Dave, I want to explain to the listeners, because we've referenced Group A and we've referenced Group B. I just want to bring people up to speed. Group A is reserved for only the teams that recruit like juggernauts. I'm talking 10 to 12 top 100 players a year in the 247 Sport Composite in a single class. There are a bunch of teams. When I say a bunch, maybe 3, 4, 5 that reach this potential. Group A teams this year, I think, for the top 5 teams in the country are Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Clemson. Clemson and Texas A&M have not been a part of the Group A discussion because they had already been eliminated when we started breaking it down this way. And Ohio State now is eliminated from this discussion because they lost to Michigan, and it does not look like they're going to be in the playoff this year. So my Group A is down to Alabama and Georgia, and I want to know right now, before we move on to Oregon and Texas and all these other teams, and just so you know, Texas is number 6 in the 247 Sport Composite, so they are a fringe top 5 team, a fringe Group A team. But do you still think that, and a lot of people are throwing Group B at me today, are you on the frame of mind that you believe, as we head in to discuss the rest of these games, that Group B has a better chance of winning the national championship on Saturday night, pushing midnight, than you did on Thursday morning?
I was 75% last week. I think I'm down to like 65%. All right, you like to dismiss Oregon. Did you watch Oregon?
I'm not dismissing Oregon. I'm just asking you.
Though.
No, I'm not. I'm fully back in.
Okay.
On the my percentage.
I believe you said the exact words that if Oregon and Georgia play, the same thing that happened like 2 years ago was going to happen to them.
I don't know if it would be to that extent. My thought process in the past was, I don't know how much ground you could possibly make up from that to now. The good thing is that Oregon, who I think is a very good team, a complete team, has a chance to prove it, and I can't wait to see if and when that happens. Look, I'm going to Vegas. I cannot wait to watch this Oregon-Washington game.
Yeah,
Kalen DeBoer stole my heart today. We're going to get into that a little bit more as we get down on the list. But your percentage now is at 65% that a team in Group A will win the national championship this year, and that Group A is down to Alabama and Georgia versus the field. Group B is the field. So the one thing that I wanted to say to everybody who throws Group B in my face a lot and says, a bad day for Group A, especially when Alabama was losing, the most critical piece to Group A is Georgia. Like Ohio State losing today gives me one less option in the playoff, but that team was never the main reason I felt that way. So as long as Georgia is in the mix, I still feel pretty good. That said, Group B has a lot of very good football teams. And listen, Texas is a very talented team. Like, I think people are like, if all the teams that scare me in Group B, it's Texas. So why don't we start there? We have other games from Saturday that we have to get to, but let's go up back to Friday. Mm-hmm. Friday night, Texas beat Texas Tech 57-7. And every single week in this regular season, we have tried to talk ourselves into the notion that Texas was going to Texas and lose to a team that they've lost to a lot in the past. The last roadblock for Texas in the regular season was a Texas Tech team that we believe would be much better than they were this year. You certainly believe they would be much better than they were.
No.
Picking them preseason to win the Big 12. But Texas beat the crap out of them. And they played a Brett Yormark clip on the screen, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, as the perfect troll on their way out. The Texas fans chanted SEC. They have one more game, and they are probably in the college football playoff. And I emerged from my house without a shirt on and screaming, "Take that, world." I got it. I am fully and utterly pleased with my prediction that Texas would make the playoff this year, and certainly feel a little bit better about it now after Oklahoma State overcame some grab ass against BYU, won in overtime, and set that matchup as Texas-Oklahoma State rather than Oklahoma going back there. They will play in Dallas next week. Oklahoma State beat BYU 40-34. Ollie Gordon had 166 rush yards and 5 touchdowns, and who just tears it up.
Took some stones to rally. Oklahoma State, they were struggling there early.
And look at here, Ryan in the chat. Texas is not back. Do you trust Texas yet? Dave?
Here's the thing, Ari.
Is Texas going to the playoff, pal? Or just yes or no? Are they going to the playoff?
No, but
what? Under what circumstance?
I think Florida State.
You think they win the Big 12 and they're not going to get in?
Yeah, sorry.
I think that would be the bad beat of all bad beats for me.
Here's my point on the Texas thing, though, Ari. Here's the thing on the Texas thing. Regardless of whether or not the results come up in their favor, regardless of any of that, they're clearly a playoff caliber team. And they are clearly the best team in the Big 12. And they did not do the dumb Texas thing. So regardless of whether or not the results bear it out, Ari, you were right about Texas this year. So you can pat yourself on the back.
It's not. No, I don't want any consolation bullshit prizes.
It's not about consolation. It's about.
I don't want to. You were right, but
you can't
I don't want to. You were
everything
right,
else.
But,
in most years, a one-loss Power 5 champion is guaranteed. I think Texas
did the way that Alabama played on Saturday open up your mind to the notion that if they beat Georgia, there's a. I don't know. I'm trying to talk myself into this here. If they beat Georgia, they're in.
Yeah.
They needed Florida State or Washington to lose, right? But even Washington wouldn't have mattered. They needed Florida State to lose. Mm-hmm. They can't have that spot taken up.
Yes.
But I did not really consider that Texas is in as much trouble as they are right now with one weekend.
They are. They need Louisville. They need to put on their Louisville pants because you've got the SEC champion in, the Big Ten champion in, the Pac-12 champion in, and Florida State's getting in ahead of them. I mean, we're sitting here, we're looking at still have 4 undefeateds going into championship weekend. I'm not a playoff scholar. That's never happened before, has it not? I'm almost certain we have never gotten to championship week with 4 Power 5 undefeateds.
Last week I did the math. It was the first time we made it to last weekend or this weekend coming into it with 5 unbeaten. So I would be shocked to hear if we ever made it this far with 4. I don't think that we have. And I thought that the Florida State game, Florida State beat the crap out of Florida the entire second half. And I think that the athletes on that team are probably marginally better than what you'll see with Louisville. We'll get to that game, but
I'd like to see Texas in over Florida State. I don't think Florida State can win a playoff game. But like I wrote last week, I could be wrong. But I mean, you can't do it. You can't do that if Florida State goes undefeated. You can't.
Okay, let's talk about Florida State. We talked about Texas. Okay. Let's talk about Florida State. Florida State was down 12-0 in this game, and their offense looked absolutely anemic. And I was like, this is it. This is bad.
Yeah.
Then they settled down. Rodemaker played a pretty good game considering the situation that he was in. He took a really tough shot at the end of the game on a late slide that he did that turned into a personal foul. I believe he came back into the game.
He came back in and handed off to Trey Benson.
So I think that's probably a pretty good sign that he'll play in the ACC championship game. But let's discuss this.
We'll see.
That Florida State team that we saw today was gutsy. They won the game. And I'm 100% with you that if you are an undefeated ACC champion with an injured quarterback, you still should go.
Yes.
But do you think that there is any possible way that they would put in a one-loss Texas team over an unbeaten Florida State team, considering the circumstances that we're dealing with here when it comes to the eye test? Because if Florida State and Texas lined up on the same field next Saturday in a dome, Texas would be laying 7. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. There's definitely a chance, Ari.
Is that out there?
I don't think it will happen. It's not 100%. I think it's like 90% they'd put in Florida State. But it's not impossible. It's in the protocol. They specifically can say. And I think it would help Florida State if they were dominant next week, or at least won by like double digits. Florida State won today. They were not dominant. They had to gut it out.
But you could also shrug this off as a tough road game and a rivalry win.
Well, let's also not forget that Florida didn't have their starting quarterback either. And they're 5-6, now 5-7. Rivalry game, sure, but it's a 5-7 game, or 5-7 team. It is what it is. I was impressed with the mental toughness of Florida State to not pack it in. Trey Benson bossed up today. Big runs when they needed him to. They're going to be pressured, and I think Ari, what's been the biggest critique about the playoff? Lopsided.
There aren't enough spots.
Well, but at the core is that the semifinals have been really, really lopsided. That's been the number one critique of the playoff, has it not? And if you put Florida State,
because you can't find 4 teams good enough to win a national title in a normal year.
Yeah, and I think if you put Florida State in there, you're sort of teeing yourself up. You're sort of teeing yourself up for that.
Yeah.
It's an impossible spot to be in because I agree with you. I think Texas would be better. I'd like to see Texas in the game, but you can't do it. You can't do it. Even though, I think most people would like to see Texas over a Florida State team, but you cannot do it.
I agree with you. You cannot do it. But what a bad beat for Texas right now. It's like I feel like it's the only route to them getting in now is that loss, right? Is there another alternate route? Because I think you could say that Alabama beats Georgia so that you have a one-loss conference champ with the one loss. And I don't think as much as you want to say the season matter, what's the one route? Don't say it. I'm not even going to entertain you saying it. Don't even say it. I don't want to talk about that team.
Beacon Hill, baby. That's a route. You looking for a route. That's
a feasible one.
That's the winding road. Take a left at Mount Everest, go down, cross the Atlantic, and
because it doesn't matter who wins or loses the Pac-12 game they're in.
No, yes.
Well, here's an interesting one. Let's go to Oregon now, and we're going to go down the playoff by talking about Oregon. Oregon, your beloved Ducks, beat the crap out of Oregon State, 31-7 on Friday
Really
night.
impressive performance.
Bo Nix, 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think if they win that game, he'll win the Heisman. And then by that game, I mean the Washington game in Vegas on Friday that I am attending.
Yes.
Let's say Oregon beats Washington, avenges its only loss of the year. Is there a discussion to be had about whether or not a one-loss Big 12 champion in Texas should go over the Pac-12 champion? Is that a route?
I'm looking through the wins. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. I'd have to look at the rankings. Oregon would only have 2 top 25 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon State and Washington. Now, I think Utah has fallen out. Could Utah sneak back in to the top 25? Because that would be huge if they did.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Well, that's sort of a big question. And
Utah beat Colorado by 6. Not that Colorado should be a discussion point, but they did beat Colorado by 6 to improve to 8-4. So I think that is possible that they jump into the back end of the top 25.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then Texas, you have Kansas State, which is a top 20 win. And they'd have Oklahoma State
and
win.
Tom Hanks' voice, Alabama.
Yeah, and Alabama. It's possible, all right. Now the question is, do you care about game control? Because Oregon has been beating the crap out of people, and Texas has been doing very, very well. And they did navigate a pretty strong stretch without their starting quarterback. It's an interesting question, Ari. I think that there is a case.
You have to turn over every stone when we're talking about this.
There's a
because I'm not used to being in this position.
I think the committee would go with would put Oregon in just based on where we're at right now in the rankings. But it's an interesting question.
I think that the problem with the SEC champ versus the Texas discussion is that the SEC champion with a win over Georgia or unbeaten Georgia is a number 1 or number 2 seed in this tournament. So they're not the 4 team that they're going to be compared to. They're going to be compared to Florida State, who's unbeaten, and I think we both agree is an untouchable if you're unbeaten. And then the 4th team would be Oregon. So it would be a head-to-head discussion between Oregon and Texas, and there's no right answer because it is 6 to 12 people in a committee room.
So bad.
And listen, I will sit here right now and tell you, man, and I was on my high horse again on Twitter because I thought that the fact that the playoff existed today was at the 14 field made today so much better. The stakes were high. If one of those 2 teams gets left out, screw the 14 field. I want 12. We've never gotten to a point. We've never gotten to this point. It's never happened. It's literally never happened where there's been more than 4 viable options. I guess you could make a case for 14 with TCU and Baylor, but this is
I don't know what made me
crime against humanity.
What do you think made me prouder? My daughter taking her first steps, or you admitting that the 12-team playoff is good? I don't know which person.
As a person who's very opinionated, and as somebody who co-hosts a podcast with other smart people, you can't exist in a world where you feel something and can't receive new information that changes your perspective and then not change it. I hate people like that. Mm-hmm. I can admit that I was wrong when I was wrong, and some of these teams being left out or the discussion of which one gets left out is wrong.
This will be one of the first times really since the Big 12 champions in 2014 where I would feel truly bad for a team.
I feel like you did enough. Texas is not in the playoff and they win. And listen, college football is a weird sport. I almost feel like today they were just begging for upsets. Washington needed a late field goal to win that game. Georgia played a weird game. Alabama needed a miracle to win. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of games in the top 25 at least that kind of went a little sideways. But the story of the season has been that upsets just really haven't been happening all that much. Now Louisville lost.
Got a bunch of close calls, but not any real upsets.
But good games, but not crazy upsets. And I just can't stand the notion that a team that is deserving to go doesn't go. And it's even worse than last year when 2 teams who didn't deserve to go got to go anyway. That's the worst part. So, I don't know who's going to win or lose any of these debates. We have some games left, but when you're looking at the schedules right now, you have this weird dynamic where a good team that is a 1-loss conference champion is probably not going to make the playoff. And buddy, I didn't think that was possible 2 weeks ago. And it sucks.
Because we've never seen it before. Sucks. I mean, statistically, it's very unlikely that we'd get to championship week and all 5 power conferences are still alive. I mean, usually you get to October and 1 league is done. And that has not been the case this year.
I mean, the Pac-12 is usually eliminated by the end of September.
Yeah. It's crazy that we're here. Again, 4 undefeateds, a Texas team that is clearly playoff caliber. Whether or not they get in or deserve to get in, they're on the same shelf as those teams. It's Louisville, Mizzou, maybe not on the same shelf as these other playoff teams, but Texas clearly is. And so, Ari, this is why we need a 12-team playoff, buddy.
I feel like they should just add in an extra game this year.
Your plan that we discussed, Ari, this is the plan that we discussed 2 weeks ago in your ideal world is that we would get to the end of the season and the committee calls you up, Ari Wasserman, and says, Ari, this year, is it a 14 playoff or a 12-team playoff? We need that plan this year, Ari.
Yeah. It should just be 8 and be done with it. Like,
I do prefer 8 over
12
12
sucks.
for the record.
12 sucks.
I'm not crazy about 12. It's better than 4, but
let's give Washington their flowers. Okay. Washington escaped Washington State 24-21. Michael Penix Jr., 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Call of the year, maybe. Call of the year. I'm ready to say call of the year. Isn't that crazy? Call of the year. How about stones of the year? Marbles of the year.
You play to win the game.
Facing a 4th and 1 with a minute and change left in a tie game and a rivalry game. Going for it on 4th and 1 from your own 29-yard line. And not only going for it, but
having play I've never seen before.
Yes. Drawing up a read play where Penix kept it, turns us back to the line of scrimmage. On 4th and 1, turns us back to the line of scrimmage. Tosses it to the halfback who runs 30-some yards
it was
to the
Odunze,
50.
Wasn't it?
Was it Odunze?
I'm not sure who it was. I think it was the mesh was to Johnson. I'm not sure. I think the pitch was to Odunze. Maybe it was not. But
it was Odunze.
Mm-hmm.
He rushes to the 50. Funny enough, Michael Penix almost throws 2 interceptions after that, both of which were in the end zone.
He tried very hard, yeah.
Washington wins the game by 3 with a last-second field goal. And you have a coach here. And here are some stats between 2 Heisman finalists. Since the first meeting they've played, Bo Nix has thrown for 2,110 yards. Michael Penix, 1,598. Total touchdowns, 25 for Bo Nix, 15 for Penix. Interceptions, 5 for Penix, 1 for Bo Nix. And Penix is very fortunate that he didn't have a 6th one in there at the end of the game. I think it dropped out of 2 defensive back hands on 2 separate occasions, and they still escaped with the win. But Kalen DeBoer, for 2 weeks in a row, they were in a critical 4th down scenario last week against Oregon State, drew up a backside shoulder one-on-one pass to Odunze on a 4th down that ended the game, perfectly executed. On this one, goes for it on his own. How many coaches in college football go for it there? How many?
Less than
5%.
Less than 20%. You have to also consider. You have to consider
29 in a rivalry game.
There's 2 things you have to consider here. One, your offense is one of the best in the country. Your defense is suspect. You got Cam Ward on the other side. 2, the relationship between Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix. You have, I think Michael Penix is 29, 30, maybe I think he's pushing 40 years old. They were together at Indiana. They came back. The level of trust there that the head coach has in his quarterback to call that in and say, hey, I know you're going to make the right read here. You've seen this. You've seen a lot of football. The game moves in slow motion. I trust your judgment. I think that tips the scales a little bit more. If you had more coaches that had a quarterback with that kind of experience, a defense that's a little leaky, if they punted that ball, Ari, I think they knew like Jake Dickert and Cam Ward are going to have something for them too. You can't give them the ball.
I think you're overshooting it by 15% still.
I think there's situational stuff there. The Philadelphia Eagles go for it.
If he wouldn't have gotten it, he would have been humiliated. That was like nuts on the table. Go for it. I mean, that was like when he lined up to go for it. My jaw hit the floor. And you know how I am. I'm always go for it. And I wrote a column at the end of the Oregon-Washington game earlier this year that Dan Lanning was my new god for going for it in that situation. You want to talk about high stakes going for it?
I think they knew they had that play too, Ari. I think they knew they had that in their back.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I was talking about with Ryan Day. Mm-hmm. Why don't you have 3 plays? Why don't you have that play dialed
that
up?
might be a 2-point play that's in their bag. I mean,
I don't know. Why doesn't every team have 10 bag plays?
Yeah. I've never seen that play before. I've never seen a reverse off of a mesh read where the quarterback turns around and pitch. I've never seen that. It's not that complex of a concept. Like, you've seen those things kind of together before, but I've just never seen that. And to call that in that situation and let your quarterback make the read, with the whole season and all that stuff on the line. Listen, coaches, trust your players. If you've got players that have proven that they can be trusted, trust them. I know one coach that put some trust in them today. I know another that didn't.
Michael Penix had the lead block on that play too.
Well, I mean, that's a generous to call that a lead block. He was more accompanying him, celebrating.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't have been able to see the play because it was such a brilliant call that the cameraman was fooled.
Yeah.
And I thought they were stuffed. I thought they just ran it and got stuffed.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they pan up and there's Odunze running down the sideline with the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
I just got to say, and then Kalen DeBoer gave a walk-on kicker who made the game-winning kick a scholarship in the locker room for a nice little moment there. Washington's going to Vegas in style, unbeaten, first team. It's in the Pac-12 era to go undefeated in regular season play. Yeah. And to go undefeated in the Pac-12 this year,
unbelievable,
was not easy. That's a very
best league in the country. The best league in the country this year.
They also played a lot of sweaters, but they won all those sweaters. And I think that's almost as impressive as getting through a league without sweating at all. So we have a hell of a game in Vegas. And the cool thing about that game is that it's not a win or go home game for only one side. It's win or go home for both. And if you win the game, you're in the playoff. And I think that it's deservedly so. And well, I guess we could have an Oregon debate a week from on Sunday. It's going to be a very interesting Sunday next week. We have a lot of football this week that's going to determine a lot of things.
Louisville can simplify everything. Louisville can make it very cut and dry, and nobody from the playoff committee's house gets egged. No vandalism threats. The committee won't be wearing Louisville shirts, but they certainly they might be wearing Louisville shirts.
I'm trying to remember who are the 4 unbeaten teams right now. We have Georgia.
You have Georgia,
Washington. You have Michigan, and you have Florida State. You want to know what the clearest cut is? All of them win, and it's all undefeated teams, and then everybody with the losses out.
Yeah, but then you have.
I think that I know, but I'm saying at least if you have 4 undefeated teams, then there's no debate. It makes it easy on the committee, and I could live with that.
All right, there's going to be debate about Florida State. There it is.
No, but what I'm saying though is I can live with 4 unbeatens going. What I can't live with is picking which one-loss team is better than the other based on circumstance. Like I won't. I could live with 4 unbeatens. They did everything in their power. That's what we talk about. Regular season is sacred. You don't.
Do you want to watch
Florida
State get beat 41-10 in the
That's not the point. The point is that they were unbeaten in the regular season. I'm not going to argue your point again. You know the point.
Yeah.
4 teams played all their games and didn't lose. Everybody else lost. No complaining. What you think is going to happen in the future is not part of the equation. These are your words. What you think is going to happen is irrelevant. That, to me, is clean. If all 4 of them win, I don't want to have a discussion about Oregon and Texas. I don't want to have a discussion between Texas and Alabama. I want this to be as clear cut as possible because I don't want to feel like somebody got screwed. Does that make me a bad person?
No, I understand what you're saying. I just am like, I don't think the committee can. I think they should give Florida State a shot, but it's not great to put a team in the playoff that would not be favored in its current state against maybe any of the top 12 teams.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your column, you're the one who wrote the column on Sunday. Like, do you not believe it?
I do. I think you can't exclude them. And I wanted to see them play. And I liked what I saw.
But it sounds like you kind of wish they would be excluded.
No, I don't. But I think it would make the playoff maybe slightly better. I think it would be grossly unfair to do it.
Yeah, well, if we made the playoff better every year, there'd be a lot of teams that were at home that didn't go. But that's the way the sport works. The regular season is sacred. You're given your assignments. You win your assignments, you go. We're not here to have the most entertaining playoff.
Well, it is a television show that's being sold.
But the committee's not designed. If the committee were designed to have the most entertaining playoff, they would just do Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State versus Georgia again. Like, that's not what we're doing here.
But then why did they move the seeding so that Michigan and Ohio State didn't rematch last year?
That was a mistake, I think.
Well, you're casting a television show.
That was a missed opportunity. Well, if you're casting a television show, then they would have put them together, right? That would have been a highly rated game.
No. Well, I mean, it would have been a highly rated game.
No.
It would have been a highly rated game, but I don't think people wanted to see the rematch. Like, they wanted to make them earn the rematch.
You don't think that Ohio State and Michigan in round 1, Georgia and TCU in round 1, and the winner of the Ohio State-Michigan game in Georgia, in the national championship would have had more total ratings than the ratings that we got last year? I would bet my life on that hypothetical matter. If you're casting a television show, they did the exact opposite thing of what you would have done. In my opinion, you get Georgia on one side and Ohio State on the other. Those are the rating kings. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I think the general public doesn't want to see two teams that just played like a month ago play again. I think there's enough.
Except the ratings would have bared out differently.
But I think among casual fans, I think you're disagreeing.
But all you're talking about from a financial standpoint is which matchups get the most ad eyeballs. It's not about what we want or what we think. It's which one would be most lucrative. And the one that they avoided would have been more lucrative. And that's a fact. So
maybe. I think a Michigan Ohio State national championship, if you had earned that, would have
been great. But there's no guarantee.
Yeah, this is true.
There's no guarantee.
We were pretty close to it. We were pretty close to it, Ari.
Yeah, we were closer than people think. That would have been like banana land.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have other championship games and teams that played in pivotal games that helped shape the discourse as we go into the week. As we get an hour into this, I don't want to forget about these. So let's do them, Dave. One, Oklahoma State came back to beat BYU. That's the second Big 12 championship game appearance in the last 3 years. They think they were down by double digits early in the game. They won.
Like 23
they kept
to 6.
Oklahoma out of the Big 12 championship game. I think this might be a less compelling matchup because OU Texas in the Big 12 championship game would have been awesome. But I also think this clears a path for Texas to potentially run into a brick wall, which sucks. Kentucky takes home the Governor's Cup, hands number 10 Louisville. Its second loss of the season, 38-31. Makes you feel a little bit less good about Louisville's chances of beating Florida State, but alas, you never know. And I think this is a nice segue to address a rumor that we saw on Twitter on Saturday night. And I don't know if
more than a rumor at this point. It's more than a rumor.
There are journalists at a Texas A&M fan site called Aggie Yell reporting that it's all but a done deal that Texas A&M is on the doorstep of hiring Kentucky's Mark Stoops as their next head coach. Now, let me just get this take off real quick, and then I'll let you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Stoops has gotten Kentucky to its ceiling as a program. And as a job qualification, I think that getting a program to its ceiling is an underrated thing that we should look for more when we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
I also understand that Mark Stoops has been very frustrated this year with the NIL situation and Kentucky's inability to raise up enough money to sign a type of roster that he knows in his heart he needs to beat Georgia. Because guess what, guys? Recruiting rankings and the players you bring into your program matter. Also, being called a second-class citizen by your basketball coach multiple times a year sucks. I 100% understand why Mark Stoops, who I think has one of the best gigs in America, great salary.
As do I.
Great salary, low stakes. We'll build a statue of you. Buyout's huge, and you don't have this huge thing hanging over your head. He goes to Texas A&M, where I think he is a very good coach who has proven that he can compete in the SEC with a substandard 3-star recruit-laden Ohio prospect roster and go win some games. I think that they vastly underachieved this year. They had a bad year for what I thought we were expecting. I understand the fit. I am kind of curious why Mark Stoops would put himself in a blender like this, because you're going from cushy job with a lot of money to Texas A&M where it's a pressure cooker. But also I know Mark Stoops. He was a defensive coordinator of the Arizona Wildcats when I was a student reporter there. And I've gone to Kentucky multiple times, hung out with him, written stories about Kentucky and what they've been doing there. I think he's a great guy, and I think he wants to win a national championship. Nicole Auerbach is also reporting that he is a target. What is your take on this? Do you like this hire? I think I like it. But you're getting a guy from Youngstown, Ohio to go down to College Station. You're giving him a big checkbook and, giving him a nice roster. I mean, is he the type of coach that you think can take a talented team like A&M, sprinkle some of that Kentucky competence dust on the roster and win big there? Or is this a mistake? Because you could also make the case, too, that if you are a coach who gets the most out of Kentucky, that the job at Kentucky is vastly different than what A&M is going to be asking him to do.
It's not splashy. It's not going to get people excited. You're going to have a portion of the fan base that you have to win over. But you know how you do that, Ari? Just win games.
Yeah.
You can't say anything to win people over. You just got to win games. And I think it's not a perfect comparison. I'll just say this, two things. One, I think people's perceptions of hires when they happen can be wildly misleading. And I think that we've seen hires that people, Jed Fish is a great example. Josh Heupel is a great example of hires that people were not excited about, that people just said, what? Like, we can do so much better than this. And they're doing great. And I can see a world where Mark Stoops perennially wins 9, 10, 11 games at Texas A&M. Like, it's not hard for me to see that at all.
Yes, Charles.
I get the rage aspect of it.
Texas A&M is a Group A team based on the way they've recruited. They were not in the Group A discussion because they lost games early on and weren't in the national championship discussion. But they do have a very deep and talented roster that is capable of big things if coached the right way. I also saw rumblings that Evan Stewart may or may not be entering the portal. That would be a big loss for them. But it is an interesting dichotomy because I know people at A&M want to bring out the checkbooks. I know they want to get somebody that's splashy. I saw another report of Dabo Swinney being a candidate. That would be a disaster. I think they want to win the press conference, but winning the press conference doesn't win you games. Go win games. So we'll see how that goes. Nicole Auerbach's on it. We'll let you guys know on the Sunday Reaction Show if there's any more movement on this, but certainly something to track. Okay. Tulane beat the crap out of UTSA 29-16 to punch its ticket to the AAC championship game. Tulane will be playing SMU in the AAC championship game, and SMU's quarterback Preston Stone left the game with injury against Navy today.
Sounds like MRIs were negative, so he might come back. It looked really, really bad when it happened, but it seems like there's some belief that maybe he could play. I think we don't know that yet. So,
Toledo roughed up Central Michigan 32-17. The Rockets have now earned their second 11-win season under Jason Candle. Will face Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship. Jason Candle might be a name that pops up on the coaching carousel as well. I think that being a head coach in the MAC is one of the hardest things to do because identifying talent at that level and distinguishing your campus from the other 8 programs that are very similar to you and in the same exact region is difficult. And he's done a very good job of separating Toledo as the class of that conference the last 2 years. So very interesting to see if a MAC coach, we talk a lot about Sean Lewis jumping from Kent State to Colorado because the MAC wasn't a great place to get noticed as a guy who has pretty big head coaching aspirations. And Jason Candle has seemingly done that. So kudos to him in Toledo. I'm excited to see how that game plays out. San Jose State beat UNLV, came back, won 37-31 to force a 3-way tie in the Mountain West. And per Chris Vanini, will come down to computer rankings to decide who plays in the championship game. It'll either be Boise State at UNLV or UNLV at San Jose State, and Boise beat Air Force 27-19 on Friday. Iowa beat Nebraska. Oh, God. Iowa beat Nebraska 13-10. I got to tell you, I watched this game live. Also, I bet this game live because Iowa was catching plus money. And if there's anything we know about this football season, it's that Iowa is going to win close games and Nebraska is going to lose them. And that's exactly what happened. Nebraska turned it over after forcing a pretty big turnover.
Yeah, Nebraska intercepted the ball to gain possession with 30 seconds left to play and lost in regulation. You know how hard that is?
Yeah, it's just Nebraska being Nebraska. They
may need more time to defrost after all.
It was unbelievable to me that our boy, offensive coordinator, Brian Ferentz, was chucking the ball 30 yards downfield after having 1 first down in the entire second half with 30 seconds left in a tie game when they could be playing in overtime. His
defense hard to get first down. Again. It's hard.
Why are you chucking the ball downfield when your team can't get a first down in that position? Why?
You got to just,
1 first down in the entire second half. Unbelievable. Iowa wins. They'll play
better Michigan. Than 0 first downs.
Michigan is a 22-point favorite in that game. I actually think that Michigan is going to win by more than 22 points. I hope that spread pops up on my account before it moves past 24, because there's no way that Iowa is going to get any first downs in that game.
Yes.
Troy earned a 7th straight win with a 35-17 win over Southern Miss. We'll play Appalachian State in the Sun Belt title game. JMU was ineligible because of the transition rule. Number 25, Liberty finishes the regular season unbeaten, beating UTEP 42-28. We'll play New Mexico State next week for the Conference USA title. They got their way into the top 25 in the college football playoff rankings, which could make things a little juicy here at the end. And now I'm going to kick it to you, Dave, because I'm out of breath. I'm hungry. I'm not hungry. I'm actually really full. But I need a break. Will you just tell people who's going to bowl games?
Utah State got it done, beating New Mexico in double overtime, 44-41. Eastern Michigan held Buffalo to 11 points, won that game 24-11. Third consecutive year, the Eagles are bowl eligible. Shout out to Chris Creighton. 3 years in a row, that's his longest streak in his 10 years there. Maybe one of the more anonymous college football coaches, but Chris Creighton gets the job done at Eastern Michigan. Old Dominion and Ricky Ronnie, they get 18 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to rally against Georgia State, beat them 25-24. Game-winning 3-yard rushing touchdown. Virginia Tech, butt-kicking in the Commonwealth Cup. They will go bowling under Brent Pry in year 2 after beating Virginia 48-10. I ran into Brent Pry at the airport at the AFCA not long ago.
Very nice man.
He's a nice guy. I don't know him super well, but nice guy. Marshall will go to a bowl game. They beat Arkansas State 35-21. Syracuse also going bowling. They beat Wake Forest. I don't think Garrett Schrader played much today. I could be wrong. Maybe he played like 3 snaps last week. I'm sure the chat can correct me.
I wanted you to do the Go Bowling segment for the next one.
UCF earns their 8th straight bowl game by beating Houston in the Space Bowl. What are we calling this? The space race? What are we calling this?
I don't understand the dilemma for the space thing. Can you?
Yes, NASA.
Is this kind of like the same thing of like where the first airplane took off? Was it Ohio or North Carolina? Is it one of these bad boys?
As far as I understand it, NASA and Cape Canaveral, which I have gone to. I did want to go to space camp when I was a kid. Never actually.
I think we all did. It's very expensive from what I remember.
Yeah, the whole 0G thing. I've always wanted to experience 0G. I have not. If anybody in the chat has got some affordable 0G hookups, please.
I mean, you might be able to go to Mars before your lifetime. Elon's working on it.
I
mean, it's possible. Like SpaceX, isn't that their whole goal? To take people into outer space? Like civilians?
I mean, if the way that he's managed Twitter is I don't know that I'd put
I'm not asking to have a discussion about the politics of this guy. Okay, wherever you like him or you don't, I'm just telling you he is working on space travel for civilians.
I'm probably not going to trust him to get me to Mars.
Would you go to space?
What kind of space are we talking about? Like out of the atmosphere or like to the moon?
I mean,
I'd go out of the atmosphere in some way. I don't know, something like that.
Where there's no gravity. Where does that occur?
Outside of the atmosphere. You got to go not super, super high, but like pretty high. I would like to experience that.
Ryan Spencer, fly Spirit to Vegas, Dave. You will experience 0G for minutes. One of the best comments we've gotten. That's funny.
No, but so Ari, the deal is that Houston is where mission control is for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's currently there or where it was.
Where do the rockets take off?
That's Cape Canaveral. That is outside of Orlando.
Okay, then that's the space. That's space.
Well, but to quote Dana Holgerson from last week, he said, they don't say Orlando, we have a problem. So,
Listen, when you call the AT&T helpline when your internet goes out and you get somebody who's not living in the country, that doesn't mean that AT&T is not an American company. It just means that that's where the support line is, right?
I think they both have some pretty good cases. I'll just tell you that. Either way, UCF got the job.
If the rocket doesn't go out of space in Houston, it's not the space place.
But that's where all the space people are. I don't know. It's an interesting debate.
People at the launch pad.
I got actual space I'm not well educated on this issue.
Okay, well, I'm not either, but I'm just going off your information. The coaches are in the booth, but the players in the field win the game, bud. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you're wearing a headset, you're either wearing a headset or you're going to space. Which one are you? You're the headset guy.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people involved in both places. I don't know. I'm sure the commenters can sort us out. I will say, as far as American cities go, Houston far greater than Orlando. Sorry, UCF fans. In the MAC, Northern Illinois beats Kent State 37-27. Kind of a nightmare season for Kent State. I think they'll be glad to have that one over. They will also go bowling. Rice, shout out to Mike Bloomgren and the Owls. Beating Florida Atlantic and Tom Herman. Tough first year for them, but they win 24-21. And Louisiana Lafayette also going bowling. Beats Louisiana Monroe. And USF, first-year coach Alex Golish, beats Charlotte today. They will go bowling as well. Shout out to that's a great first year in Tampa. They had won like 3 games under Jeff Scott the last 3 years combined, and they win 6 in year 1. That's a great program. Tough circumstances to take over there.
Dude, you're in luck.
Am I?
From $9,070 US, you can experience 5 hours of 0G experience in Las Vegas.
5 hours seems like a lot. I'd like give me 15 minutes and I'm good, I think.
I'm just saying they have it in Vegas and you're going there. So hit the tables, win some cash, and do the 0G.
I will say I'm very seriously considering going to the Sphere in Vegas next week.
What do you mean?
Ari, you're going to be you two is going to be there when you're there, and there's like a Earth show in the Sphere. I gotta see.
It is going to go belly up here pretty soon, so I probably have to get into it.
Either way, the Sphere is.
It costs more money to make the Sphere than it did to make the Win.
That's all right. The Win's not Sphere.
Think about it. No, I know, but how do you make that money back? I didn't go to medical school, but
I was
spending $2,800 on a pair of U2 tickets.
Ari, I got a hot America take for you. Okay. The Sphere, top 5 attraction in America right now.
What are the other 4? The crepe place at the airport, melting pot,
crepe place, melting pot. Let me see. No, top 5 attractions. I don't know. I mean, Dollywood's probably number 2. I would say.
Okay. All right. High five to the G5. Texas State ties its best season ever with its 7th win.
Yeah.
Miami of Ohio racks up its 10th win for the first double-digit season since 2010. App State scores 28 unanswered points in the second half to punch its ticket to the Sun Belt title game. Boise State keeps its Mountain West Championship hopes alive by beating Air Force 27-19. Tulsa snaps a 6-game losing streak to East Carolina, 29-27. Our locks of the week.
It was a rough week.
Yeah, is it the locks of the week? These are last week's locks that we have here.
Well,
right?
I had my lock of the week was Ohio State, Michigan under 45. That didn't go
well for you.
No, it didn't.
I cannot remember what my lock of the week was, and I know it hit. That's what annoys me.
Those are the best ones. At some point, Ari, we do need to rank our top 5 attractions in America. I feel like that'd be top 5 things in America you have to see or experience. I feel like that would be an interesting list.
The Alamo.
The Alamo's terrible, Ari. The Alamo is maybe just saying, the most overrated.
Okay, I've been to a lot of these. Grand Canyon, I've been there. Statue of Liberty,
Canyon's probably on my top 5. Grand Canyon,
the San Antonio Riverwalk.
No, it smells.
Walt Disney World.
Constantly. I mean, Disney World. It's great. Don't get me wrong, but
SeaWorld.
No.
Oh yeah, my lock of the week was Thursday night, Bowling Green.
Oh yeah, that's right.
-2.
Yeah. That's why you forgot because it was not even close. And it was 3 days ago.
I told them.
You know how much football we've watched since then?
No, I know, but my lock of the week hit, and it was an easy win. So I hope you tailed it. Other attractions are the Riverwalk in San Antonio, which, by the way,
are you just looking at San Antonio?
I just wrote top 5 attractions in America. Here's what came up in Google: the Navy Pier, Golden Gate Bridge, Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, the National Mall, Niagara Falls, which has casinos. So let's go.
My Sphere take is going great right now because
the National Mall.
Grand Canyon's the only thing I've heard that's better.
Tourist attractions in America: the National Mall,
Niagara
Falls,
Mall is not great.
The French Quarter, the Statue of Liberty, the Old Faithful.
I haven't been there. Okay.
The Strip of Las Vegas.
I mean,
the Smithsonian Museums, the Grand Canyon, the J. Paul Getty Museum, which I think is photography.
I don't know.
The Kennedy Space Center in Orlando. Little Havana in Miami, the Hoover Dam.
Hoover Dam is not great.
Where can I get some dam bait? The Hoover Dam is much better now that they created the highway that goes over it, so that if you actually want to go to the Hoover Dam, you're not just like in a log jam of traffic. Spent many days.
I went when I was like 13.
Driving from Phoenix to Vegas and having to go over the Hoover Dam. You do not have to go over the Hoover Dam anymore.
I feel good about this take, Ari. That the Sphere is a top.
The Gateway Arch, Mammoth Cave, the Golden Gate Bridge.
I don't know what
Space
the
Needle
is.
The Navy Pier, Alcatraz.
Navy Pier is insane. The Navy Pier, that is an insane. If you have that in your top 20,
there's absolutely nothing going on the Navy Pier.
Yes, it's terrible. It's just like a tourist trap.
Well, here's a good attraction. Sunday Sound Off on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Be
top
sure
10 American attraction.
Top 10 American attraction, if you ask both of us. The phone number for that is 316-462-9852. Again, that is 316-462-9852. This is a very, very emotional weekend for a lot of people. Ohio State fan, Michigan fan. You've been through a lot the last week. Call in. Leave a voicemail. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you. Anybody else have anything to say? Auburn fan, love to hear from you. That couldn't have been easy. Whatever you have to say. College football playoff race, Texas. There was so much to cover in this episode. I feel like we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. We didn't come close to scratching the surface, which is why we'll have our secondary show on Sunday. Thank you all for tuning in to Until Saturday's live reaction show for Week 13. Be sure you're following the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll be notified when new episodes are up. We always appreciate 5-star reviews and ratings, share, comments, anything that you can do to interact with either channel, whether it be on the podcast feed or on the YouTube page is greatly appreciated as we try to continue to get this to grow. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel if you're here and you haven't done so already, where we will be live Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and most recently, or most soon, again on Sunday evening for our live streams. And subscribe to the Until Saturday newsletter and, of course, The Athletic, where you can get $1 a month deal for our Black Friday special at theathletic.com/Saturday. $1 a month for the next 12 months. For Dave Ubben, I'm Ari Wasserman. Thanks for listening. That was Until Saturday.
And bring back the turnover chain.